for our elderly folks, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Muharram and Safar are months of mourning for us, and as we're preparing for Arba'een of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and as some of our community members are preparing or leaving for this, we must realize that the 7th of Safar and also the 28th of Safar is one of the martyrdom nights from the narrations for Imam Hasan alayhi salam. And just how many of people visit Imam Hussein alayhi salam in the millions, but Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself, who did he visit? Whose grave did he visit? Some say every Thursday night he visited the shrine or the grave of his brother Imam Hasan alayhi salam. So we must learn about this Imam, especially about his childhood, because his childhood was a time period around 7 or 8 years of age where he had the opportunity to be raised with Rasulullah, the best of creation. Imam Hasan alayhi salam, if I ask you which verses of the Holy Quran are about Imam Hasan, what would you reply? I want you to think in your mind right now, which verses do you know about the fada'il and virtue of Imam Hasan alayhi salam? Because the Quran is the best source, and we want to talk about Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. They're unique in the fact that so many verses are about them. And there are verses that are for no other than the family of the Prophet. When you think of, for example, Mubahila, that is one verse, 361, that Imam Hasan alayhi salam and Imam Hussein were introduced as the sons of Rasulullah. Even though it does not say grandchildren, the verse has abna. Abna are sons. But Imam Hasan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, you know that their distance, their separation was less than a year. They're very close to one another. These two brothers were introduced as the sons of Rasulullah, and from the category that during that day when the Christians of Najran came to make dua, to see who is right, Rasulullah is right or the Christians are right, everyone wanted to be part of this dua competition or mubahala. And therefore you see that for sons there's Imam Hasan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. What other verse in the Quran can we use for Imam Hasan alayhi salam to understand a little bit of the great station that he had? The verse of purification, 33:33. Where Imam Hasan, Imam Hussein, Lady Fatima, Imam Ali, and Rasulullah are introduced as Ahlul Bayt. If anyone asks, what is the meaning of Ahlul Bayt, the family here mean? It's very clear in tradition, it is these 5. Because the wife of Rasulullah wanted to come in, but they were excluded. And Rasulullah mentions in Sunni sources, Ha'ula'i Ahlul Bayti. These are my children. This is the explanation of Ahlul Bayt. It is these 5. So it's limited to these 5. And the Quran says, يُطَهَّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا, meaning that they have a thorough purification. We understand from this verse infallibility, being ma'soom of Imam Hasan. So far from the Quran, we understand Imam Hasan alayhi salam as being ma'soom and tahir and pure, into being of the best and the son of Rasulullah. Or you see other verses of the Holy Quran, when mentioned from all the prophets, they mention, give for us a wage, do not give for us a wage, do not give for us a wage, la as'alukum alayhi ajr, I do not ask you any wage recompense for my messengership, for my mission. Because the prophets wanted to show that they're sincere. They do not want the people's money. They do not want any benefit from the people. They're here to serve the creation of God. But there's one prophet in the Quran that is asked and commanded to ask for a wage, to ask for ajr. What is the ajr of Rasulullah's mission? It is none other than al-mawadda fil qurba, the attachment of the family, the love of the family. So this is another verse that Imam Hasan and Imam Hussein are examples that when you cry for them, you remember them. They're examples of the wage of Rasulullah. And many other verses, we understand that Imam Hasan alayhi salam has been mentioned, the verse of it'am, the verse of giving food while they are fasting. But this is a very good way to start the life of Imam Hasan, is Imam Hasan alayhi salam in the Holy Quran, infallibility, being the son of Rasulullah, being of the best in the category of children and sons to make dua competition, and being equivalent to the wage of Rasulullah, the mission that no other prophet asked for a wage, but Rasulullah was commanded for this, and this was for us. Let's recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When you look at the life of Imam Hasan alayhi salam, you see a life that he is the first child of Imam Hasan, of Imam Ali and Lady Fatima alayhimus salam. And you see that Rasulullah has spent time with Imam Hasan. Imam Ali has spent time. Lady Fatima spent time. When you look at the seerah, you see that there are times, repetitively, where Lady Fatima would ask, what did Rasulullah say on the pulpit? And Imam Hasan alayhi salam would inform Lady Fatima what was said. He was instructed to listen and to explain the minbar and the speech of Rasulullah. This is one way of tarbiyat and training children. Brothers and sisters, when we become parents, when our obligations are not only limited to health and safety, we are obliged to make sure our children grow up in a wholesome environment, grow up with teachings of Islam. Alhamdulillah, one of the great things that Yasin has been doing for years is Sunday school, where we teach the children, over 100, 150 children, sign up around. And we teach them at a young age, because teaching at a young age is like inscribing on a rock. It stays there forever. But teaching someone at an old age is like inscribing or writing something on water. So we have to be very dutiful and careful. Not the fact that we only send them to Islamic schools, or we send them to Sunday school and say, that's it, you learn your Quran there. We have to be careful and to give them the opportunity and to train them ourselves. You see, some of the instructions I want to share with you that we have. One is at the age of 3. We have instructions from 3. Some say 3 is too young. We have the tradition or the saying that teach them La ilaha illallah. There's no God but Allah. And not necessarily is it this statement, La ilaha illallah, that God exists. You teach a kid, for example, God exists. If you do something bad, there can be, for example, something bad can happen to us. Or if we do something good, you'll be rewarded by Allah that is very watching over us. Allah that we are responsible as a child. That if nobody else watches you and you do something bad, Allah is watching you. These are instructions we have from the age of 3. That Muslim children should grow up with the belief of God. You don't introduce these topics later on when they're 15, 16. At the age of 3, you introduce them to God and fear of God and hope in God. 2, you see from some of the instruction we have to command your children salat at the age of 7. Now, yes, we don't want to give them a too much difficult time, but we have instructions that you teach them how to salat, pray salat. Now, this is practice. The first instruction was belief. The second is about practice. They practice salat because when they reach the age of taklif and obligation, they now already know how to pray. They are used to praying. One of the issues that we have that makes salat easy for us is that we have become accustomed to salat. That is what makes it easy. You get used to it. But if somebody just becomes Muslim, or if somebody just has taklif, and you want to teach them salat in Arabic, and for example, tell them you have to pray 5 times a day, it is a very difficult task. It's actually one of the most difficult tasks. One of our dear speakers and lecturers that passed away last year, Sayyid Asad Jafri, he was explaining that Hajj, many here have gone to Hajj. We're looking for the bald heads to see who has gone to Hajj. Some of them went to Hajj, and you see that Hajj is difficult, right? Performing Hajj, especially now how it is, with the heat, with all the rules and regulations, with all the sometimes the environment and the attitude that they have against followers of Ahlul Bayt, Hajj is difficult. But the speaker said, Asad Jafri, Allah bless his soul, was saying, Hajj with all its difficulty is easy. Why is it easy? Because you only do it once. Do it once and you're done. However hard it is, it's once. But salat is 5 times a day. Waking up Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. This is difficult. How can I make it easy for my child? This is traditions from 7. You teach them how to pray. You teach them, getting them used to salat. When they get used to something, the beginning is hard. The beginning they might mess up, but they don't have taklif. So when they're at the age of taklif, they have mastered it. And it becomes easy for them. As the tradition has, Udu anfusakum, get yourselves used to khair. That first step of having a good habit and making something habitual for us, that first step is hard. But then when it becomes habitual, that child will say, I cannot live without salat. I've been praying salat for such a young age. I've been practicing it. It is now easy for me. So therefore, getting used to salat, we see in the sayings of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam and the instructions. The other we see at the age of Imam Hasan was about 7, 8, for example, when Rasulullah passed away, we see that actually he fasted at a young age. The verse of It'am shows this. The verse of It'am, the verse that when Imam Hasan and Imam Hussein were sick and Rasulullah encourages Imam Ali alayhi salam to have a family vow that if these children become good, to fast. We learn from this story that if you have tribulation, sometimes make a vow of fasting. Making a vow of fasting is inside the Quran. And therefore they recover, they want to fast. First day they're fasting. You know, the poor person, needy person, different people, a miskeen comes, for example. Asir becomes, different categories of group come. But an interesting thing is Imam Hasan was fasting at that age. And Imam Hasan willingly gives his iftar himself to the poor. They did not force him. An interesting thing, another thing about this verse of It'am, they're 5 or they're 4 at that time fasting. They can't have just, Imam Ali could have just given his own food because it's one person each night. But yet all 4 give. Imam Ali alayhi salam gives. Lady Fatima gives. Imam Hasan gives. Imam Hussein gives. All 4 of them give for one person. All 4. So therefore you see giving charity at a young age, fasting at a young age, commanded to do salat at a young age. So therefore we have this responsibility. Now some ask this important question, I have done my taklif. But sometimes children are not going to become guided. It is not up to me. My responsibility is to give them that environment, those teachings, and that opportunity. But it is up to that child to make that decision. You cannot force anyone. You have to just give them that opportunity. And if in your conscience, you gave them the opportunity and they did not follow it, then you do not have any taklif or obligation. As you see, for example, the story of Prophet Nuh, for example, and his son, that he's not of your family, the Quran says. So we try, but the major thing that we have is sometimes we do not try hard enough. Or sometimes we give too much focus to the material things, which are important. With education, it is important. You know, having the ability, for example, to go to great schools, that is important, all of this. But what is more important as a Muslim is that spiritual benefit outweighs material. We should always choose the spiritual over the material. Yes, many cases, they go hand in hand. Children that study well, they also will be able to do good when it comes to taqwa and not sinning. Actually, we have in tradition from Imam Bagha alayhi salam to work hard for this world, to work hard. Because if you do not work hard, that person that does not work hard in this world is aksal, is lazier for the akhirah. There's a relationship with being lazy for the hereafter and being lazy for this world. Because this world they see, you see this world in front of you. The hereafter we do not see. So if I'm going to be lazy in this world, I'll also be lazy in the hereafter. So there is things that go hand in hand with hard work for Allah, also we have hereafter. But when it comes to choosing, for example, for our children, I'm a very good person, I'm a proponent or encourager of either homeschooling or Islamic schools. Yes, it might mean some people, families, we know they had to drive all the way. For example, the School of City of Knowledge, I was speaking to some of the parents, they had to drive all the way to Victorville. From Victorville to drop my child off in Pomona. 2 hours every time, go and back, 2 hours. But it is our obligation, it is our duty to make sure that that environment that that child is being raised is a good environment, inshallah. Let's recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil faraj. Rasulullah would teach many things by example. And in one of the stories we have for Imam Hasan alayhi salam is that once, as a child, he asked for water. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam also asked for water. Rasulullah got up, provided them with water or milk, provided them. He did not give Imam Hussein, which was younger than Imam Hasan, first. He gave the water or milk to Imam Hussein. Do you know why? It has that Rasulullah said Imam Hasan asked first. Imam Hasan asked first, teaching us that there's organization, that there is a haqq for that person, a right. You know, when you sit in the masjid, there's this haqqul sibqa, for example, that haqq that a person has in a masjid or center, when they place their turba or for example, prayer mat, they have a right, even though centers, or for example, are for the Muslimin or masjids or for the believers, but placing your personal belonging, reserving that place and sitting at that place, you have haqq, you have a right, because you came there first. So teaching us, or teaching Imam Hasan alayhi salam the beliefs, the strong beliefs at such a young age, when the Prophet came to conquer Mecca, and Abu Sufyan knew that he would fail. At the end, it says that he came to Imam Hasan alayhi salam because he knew Rasulullah loved him so much. He says, because of this child, let this child be a shafi' for me, an intercessor, a mediator. Because of this child, allow us to live our lives as, polytheists, as, however we want to. Allow us, do not, make us give up Mecca. Let us live how we are living. Even though this is in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, that Mecca would belong to Rasulullah. Imam Hasan himself speaks and mentions that there is no God but Allah. He teaches them and mentions that they have to worship Allah at such a young age. So you see this belief. Of course, we believe that the Imams had divine knowledge, but this emphasis that Rasulullah, Imam Ali, Lady Fatima alayhi salam had on Imam Hasan showed itself. And it showed itself when Imam Hasan alayhi salam became, look at his qualities. That as a child that was raised with these infallibles, you see that Imam Hasan alayhi salam became one of the great worshippers of God. That the way that he would stand for prayer, the way that he would prepare himself for prayer. The tradition has that he would irta'adat mafasil, his mafasil, his joints would shake. He would shake. Or it says, for example, was farra lawnu, his face would become yellow. The worship of Imam Hasan alayhi salam. And mention, why do you shake? Why, for example, do you become yellow when you come to get wudu, for example, when you come to prepare for salat? He mentions that I am surprised that this does not happen to others. فَقَالَ حَقٌّ عَلَى كُلِّ مَنْ وَقَفَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ رَبِّ الْعَرْشِ. Everyone should do this. This is the right And this is the reality that everyone, when they face Allah, they should be like this. This is the worship of Imam Hasan alayhi salam. Another part of the life of this holy individual that unfortunately sometimes when it comes to his life we know less about. And if you compile how many traditions there is from Imam Hasan, you see that many of those traditions have not reached us. Because Imam Hasan lived a long life. He was martyred at the age of 50, for example, at 50 Hijri. So around, say, 43, for example, of age, 44. But you see at that time, how many traditions he would have? 10 years he was the Imam. And how much did he speak? How much? But you see, sometimes, if you take the traditions of Imam Hasan, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, maybe it only equal to 100, 200 pages, what we have today. Very limited, because they did not allow the tradition, the hadith, and the narrations of Imam Hasan alayhi salam to reach us. His biography is even madlum. Yes, the Quran talks about verses, many fada'il, but the exact speech of Imam Hasan alayhi salam has not been shared to us exactly how it has been said. Imam Hasan alayhi salam, when it comes to his life, you see, kana a'badan nas. He was the best worshipper of God. Fi zamanihi wa azhadahum wa afdalahum. He was the most, he disdained the most from the world. He was the best when it came to fada'il and virtue. Kana idha hajja hajjan mashiyan. He would do hajj, walking. وَرُبَّمَا مَشَى حَافِيًا. Sometimes he would walk barefoot. وَكَانَ إِذَا ذَكَرَ الْمَوْتِ بَكَى. When he would remember death, he would cry. How much do we reflect throughout the day, throughout the week, that when we think of death, that we cry. وَإِذَا ذَكَرَ الْقَبْرِ بَكَى. When he thinks of the grave, he would cry. وَإِذَا ذَكَرَ الْبَعْثِ وَالنَّشُورِ بَكَى. When we think of death, resurrection, and being raised again, وَالنُّشُورِ بَكَى. وَإِذَا ذَكَرَ الْمَمَرَ عَلَى الصَّرَاطِ بَكَى. When we think about passing on the Sarat, he would cry. So you see, a very reflective Imam Hasan alayhi salam, an Imam Hasan that even though he's infallible, he's sinless, he has divided his money and wealth with the poor multiple times, but yet he does not rely on his action. He is thinking and crying, and he still has khawf and fear of God. This is another lesson to learn from the life of Imam Hasan, that regardless of how much action we have, how pious we are, we should always fear Allah, because we do not know if our actions are accepted. We do not know of how great our worship has been. And we always have to look at ourselves as being insufficient. Let's recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So another aspect of the life of Imam Hasan alayhi salam is the life that he was teaching others. We had the example of many people trying to teach tafsir of the Holy Quran when Imam Ali alayhi salam was left alone. You see Tamim al-Dari, for example. Or you see Kalb al-Ahbar. You see people that were previously Jewish or Christian. They started giving tafsir and explaining what the Quran was. Because the Quran is very clear. And many non-Muslims, they tell me, or people that have become Muslim tell me, the Quran is very clear. Even I'm reading it 1400 years later. I understand the Quran. It speaks to me. But yet there are many verses that people are confused about. So what did people do back then when they wanted to understand the Holy Quran? They would refer to what we call Isra'iliyat, some of the false stories that were brought from the Bible and from Torah into Islam, because they did not have knowledge of this, and the previous Jews and Christians had knowledge of this. So they began to teach and do tafsir of the Holy Quran. So one instance, a person comes to the Masjid al-Nabi, and at that time he asks, for example, in Surah Al-Buruj, you have the verse, وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ. What is this shahidin wa mashhud? Who is this witness and what is witnessed? You say, okay, witness and what is witnessed, but what does it mean? If you look today in some of the traditions of Ahlul Sunnah, it's not very clear. Each one has something different. So he asked one person in the masjid, he says, Shahid and Mashhud, what does it mean? Witness and place of witness. And the first says, for example, Shahid is Friday. And Mashhud is Arafah, for example, the day of Arafah. Another says it's Friday, but Mashhud, Shahid is Friday, and Mashhud is the day of sacrifice, Eid al-Adha. Then they asked Imam Hasan alayhi salam, what does Shahid and Mashhud mean? And because he understands the Holy Quran, and he uses, because when we understand speech, we use other parts of speech to understand other parts of speech. Some of the verses of Quran, he says, according to this, that Shahid is Rasulullah, the witness. Salla ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajir farajum. The Shahid witness is Rasulullah, the person, the complete individual who will bear witness to our actions. That on the day of judgment, Rasulullah, and we have traditions from Sunni and Shia, that our a'mal is presented. Multiple narrations we have from Shia and Sunni, that our actions are presented even today, right now, to Rasulullah, even after his passing, is presented to him. And some of the Sunni traditions say that then he makes dua, for example, if it's good, and it is istighfar for us if it's bad. So Shahid, and we have verses of the Quran, Ya ayyuhan nabi, inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira. We have sent you as a witness, a bringer of tidings, and a warner. So therefore, you see that Rasulullah, Imam Hasan alayhi salam, uses the Quran, says Shahid is who? Rasulullah. And Mashhud is the day of judgment. Mashhud is the place that he will give witness. And we have from the Quran, ذَلِكَ يَوْمٌ مَشْهُودٌ, when it talks about the akhirah. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةً لَمَنْ خَافَ عَذَابَ الْآخِرَةِ. Then it continues, وَذَلِكَ يَوْمٌ مَشْهُودٌ, and this is the day which will be witnessed. So beautifully, Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, they preserved the interpretation and tafsir of the Holy Quran. And Imam Hasan alayhi salam, during this time, he taught the Holy Quran. But one of the very important aspects of the life of Imam Hasan that we'll be ending tonight's lecture with are the difficulties that Imam Hasan alayhi salam faced. He faced many difficulties. Because if you really want to understand this, you see that during the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam, that even though people came and chose Imam Ali alayhi salam to be the ruler, they did not necessarily choose him to be the Imam. This is a very important historical point, is that they chose him as the fourth. When they came to Imam Ali alayhi salam, they did not choose him except for a few, that you are the infallible Imam. Whatever you say, I have to listen. If you say go to the fire, I will go to the fire. No, it's just the fourth Khalifa, fourth successor. So during one of the most challenging times of Imam Ali's life is the Battle of Siffin. It lasted a long time. And there were very difficult nights. Maybe around 70,000 people died in the Battle of Siffin. Imam Ali alayhi salam, his army became tired. And if you want to learn more about this, look at the sermon of 27 in Nahj al-Balagha, where Imam Ali alayhi salam is speaking to his people, and you understand that he does not approve of them. In sermon 27, a few parts, just in English I'm going to read. Imam Ali alayhi salam is quoted to have said, when I ask you to move against them in summer for fighting, for jihad, you say it is hot weather. This is the people that Imam Ali alayhi salam, his soldiers. I told you to fight, for example, and you say it's summer, it's too hot. And then spare us till the heat subsides from us. Leave us alone, let it become cool. Winter we'll fight. And then when I order you to march in winter, you say it's severely cold. Give us till cold clears us. Give us time until cold clears from us. So then Imam Ali, very interesting, and says, Ya ashbah al-rijal. You're not men. You're as if the resemblance of men. You're not men. And then he talks about hulum al-atfal, that your intelligence is that of children. So Imam Ali alayhi salam lived at a time period, again, they did not accept him as Imam alayhi salam, except for a few. They accepted him as the Khalifa. And you see that what Muawiyah did during this time, he began to raid. He began to raid different cities and different areas of the Muslim world. Some of the scholars, for example, Ibrahim ibn Muhammad al-Kufi al-Thaqafi, has this very old book, maybe 270 Hijri, he passed away 280, by the name of Al-Gharat, the raids. 10 raids that Muawiyah, they would raid people and steal from them. This was the army of Sham, the army of the Umayyads. Sometimes they would raid the Hujjaj, the caravan of the Hujjaj, those going to Hajj. So Imam Ali alayhi salam was faced with such a clear, manifest enemy, but yet the people did not want to help until it became the time of Imam Hasan. Imam Ali alayhi salam was martyred. He had 3 major battles during his time. Nahrawan, for example, with the Khawarij that left from the arbitration. Siffin in the Battle of Jamal. Now it's the time of Imam Hasan for a few months. He is the Khalifa of the Muslimin. He has Ibn Abbas, Ubaidullah ibn Abbas as his general. Ubaidullah ibn Abbas is his family, is his cousin. It's Abdullah ibn Abbas's brother. He himself has lost 2 children to Muawiyah. But yet he sells out, the general of Imam Hasan alayhi salam, sells out for gold coins, silver coins to Muawiyah. Now Imam Hasan alayhi salam is faced with a very difficult decision at that time to have a peace treaty which he knows that Muawiyah will not follow, just to save the followers of Ahlul Bayt, save the message, save the progeny. And maybe one of the wisdom of that is with this army that Imam Ali is already telling us in letter 27, that summer they do not want to fight, winter they don't want to fight, how is he going to stand up against Muawiyah? So the Imams, they will fight as long as people will help them, support them, and they want to be ruled by the Imam. If they do not want to be reformed by the Imams will be in peace and in silence, and they will see what benefits the Ummah the most. Until people are ready to have the Imam, as the tradition has, the Imam's example is the example of the Kaaba. The Kaaba, you go towards the Kaaba. The Kaaba does not come towards you. When people want to go to the Kaaba, they will lead them. So Imam Hasan alayhi salam is faced during his end of his, the beginning of his imamat, that he has to have the peace treaty, and therefore he is, leaves that position that he has. I'm going to end tonight's discussion from a saying from Imam Hasan alayhi salam, so we understand that Imam Hasan, the childhood, the legacy, the childhood of Imam Hasan, how Rasulullah would train him, teach him. We learned about the education that Imam Hasan alayhi salam would spend and teach many companions and feed the poor. But remember, it's not only about akhlaq of the Imams also have the political side, the side that they are the rulers, and the logic and aql of Imam Hasan alayhi salam at that time to have the peace treaty. A tradition for Imam Hasan alayhi salam, and will end, Ya ibn Adam, innaka lam tazal fi hadm umrik, O son of Adam, you do not end in loss of your life. Mundu saqatta min batn ummik. Whenever you came to this world, basically, you're always in hadm or in loss. From the time period that you were born, your life is trickling and melting away. For example, when you're born, you had, say, this many thousands of months life. If you had a, for example, graph, it would show how much life you have. It doesn't increase, right? Everyone's life decreases. So there he warns us and says, you have a life that is going away from you. There's hadm in it. It's being destroyed. It's being ruined. Your life is going away. فَخُذْ مِمَّا فِي يَدَيْكَ لَمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْكَ. So choose from what you have in front of you on your front hands, what you can choose right now, what you can collect. For what you will face in the future, collect. Collect as much as you can. Because you're in loss. There's this scholar, they say, that once he told his students, that is, maybe a fable, a story, but anyways, they say that they told his students that collect. There's a scholar, they said, that they collect as much as you can in the darkness. And everyone collected. And then later on, they turned on, they asked each other, what did you collect? There's things on the ground. There were people that collected few, they didn't know what it was. And they later found out this was, for example, precious stones. Those that collected a little, they were sad. They said, oh, this teacher told me collect. Get as much as you can. I didn't listen, and now I only have a little bit for myself. I didn't listen. And then there are those that collected a lot. They took a lot. They were even sad. Said, I wish I would have collected more. That is the example the teacher says of this world. That you are in a place where you can collect precious stones. You can collect for yourself castles. A home that will be forever, completely beautiful. That some of the tradition mentions that the angels travel for 1 year. 1 year of the angel travels. Say, I'm still in the property of one believer. Travels for 1 year. So that's how vast his empire, his land is. So and I tell myself, you have the opportunity now, when you're born, to collect and build for yourselves. So collect for what is in front of you, for what will be in front of your hands, which is for the hereafter. Then he says, فَإِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنِ يَتَزَوَّدْ. The moment prepares. When you want to travel, you prepare for yourself things before you travel. You have suitcases, luggage. Mu'min prepares. وَالْكَافِرْ يَتَمَتَّعْ. But the disbeliever just enjoys, is thinking of the short term, just wants to have fun in this world. Do not look at those that are around you that are just having a good time in this world and wasting their life. Be, as Imam Hasan alayhi salam says, those who collects and takes for themselves and prepares for that final abode. Inshallah, we can dim the lights and remember Imam Hasan alayhi salam, as we said, the month of Muharram and Safar, these 2 months are precious months for us. However much that we fall off the right track, we become tainted with sin. These 2 months come and they wash all the sin away. That is why the remembrance of Imam Hussein, Imam Hasan, Ahlul Bayt is so important in this month. It washes everything away. Imam Hasan alayhi salam is madloom, is oppressed. Everything we think about him is oppression. Today, brothers and sisters, we see millions of people going to Karbala, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, having 90 kilometers of food for the zawar of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But I ask you, 7th of Safar, what do you think was happening in Medina? 28th of Safar, what do you think will be happening in Medina? Maybe the only guests of Imam Hasan, besides the angels, will be pigeons. A shrine that has been demolished, a shrine that does not exist. And yet many of you have gone to Medina recently. You don't know where to stand and to do the ziyarat of Imam Hasan. Imam Hasan alayhi salam, he had the first official funeral of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Because Rasulullah did not have a funeral. Imam Ali alayhi salam was washing him, burying him while they fought for power. Lady Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, she did not have a funeral. She was buried per her own instructions, to bury me at night, wash me at night. وَلَا تُعْلِمْ أَحَدًا. Ali alayhi salam, do not tell anyone, do not inform anyone. Now it is the time for Imam Hasan, the first of Ahlul Bayt, and then Imam Ali alayhi salam. Imam Hasan buried him